Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Story number 1 opens with a stark contrast. One sibling grinding through school and a full-time job to keep his family afloat, another treating welfare as an ATM and her relatives as backup funding. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. The sister who called everyone selfish for not funding her life. This is a story about my sister. Her entitlement knows no bounds. Years ago, I was going to college, taking anywhere from 15 to 21 credit hours a semester while working a full-time job to support my wife and children. I was chronically exhausted and broke. I could pay my bills, but we had a very tight budget. Movie and dinner nights were very rare occasions. We had to strictly budget gas money just to drive to see my in-laws a few hours away. My sister, on the other hand, was a bum. She had a bum husband. He constantly got fired from dead-end jobs, and she wanted the stay-at-home mom life without having a husband who was a breadwinner. So she was on all forms of welfare she could find. Section 8, Medicaid, food stamps, WIC, food banks, community Christmas drives for the poor, monetary help from local churches. If a community service existed, she would sniff it out and exploit it. Every time I looked at my pay stub, I would get angry knowing my taxes went into her entitled pocket. One day she came over to my house and told my wife a sob story about needing baby formula. My wife looked at her like she was crazy. For those who don't know, food stamps and WIC both cover the cost of formula. It can be found at some food banks as well. She should have more than enough formula each month. She should have a surplus. But she'd rather trade her food stamps to people for cash, welfare fraud, and run out before the end of the month. So she was crying to my wife and asked if she could take some of our formula. My wife's jaw dropped. She said, "We have to pay for formula with our own money. We can barely afford it for our child." My sister begged and pleaded and then stormed out of my house angry because my wife wouldn't give her any formula. She began telling my family that we were being selfish. Around the same time, another sister sold a house and got a decent sum of money, which she and her husband intended to use to build a couple of spec homes to sell. They were building their retirement nest egg. My entitled sister called them up and told them she needed $50K to pay off her debts. She fully expected them to hand her the money. When they said no, she said, "You have the money and I need it. Why are you so selfish?" She hung up on them and did the same thing she did to us, calling everyone to say how selfish they were. I haven't been in contact with her in many years. No one's more selfish than the person who thinks other people should give them things because they have it. Definitely stick with permanent no contact, and I hope you've blocked her from your phone and all of your social media. And our second story. She insisted the last tour left at 1500. I didn't tell her she was looking at Swedish time. Play stupid games, win no tour. This happened about 15 years ago in a Swedish-speaking region of Finland, one of those coastal areas that gets flooded with Swedish tourists every summer. Since locals speak Swedish, the tourists often forget they're in an entirely different country. Most of the time, it doesn't matter. But in this story, two little details matter a lot. Finland uses euros, Sweden uses kronor. Finland is 1 hour ahead of Sweden. Both of those things will come into play. At the time, I worked at a small animal park. Visitors couldn't just wander in because the animals roamed freely, so the only way to enter was through a guided tour that started every hour on the hour. Right outside the entrance was a little shop where we sold tickets, souvenirs, candy, your standard tourist setup. One day I was on shop duty when a woman who genuinely could have been named Karen walked up and asked for 4 tickets for the next tour. 2 adults, 2 kids. Adult tickets were 8 euros, children 5 euros. I told her the total was 26 euros. She blinked at me and said, confused, but I thought it was 6 kronor per person. I pointed to the price list, literally hanging right next to the window, clear as day, in euros, as in this country's currency. Apparently this was the wrong answer. Karen immediately launched into how our website clearly stated 6 kronor and how I had to honor that price. This surprised me because I knew for a fact the website was correct and we certainly didn't list prices in Swedish crowns. I explained that gently. She did not accept it gently. Cue the shouting, the lecturing, the "I'm calling the police," the dramatic sighs. I asked her if she could show me the website she was talking about. She insisted it was not her responsibility. Finally, she demanded to speak to the manager. I'd already reached my limit, so I told her with full honesty that the manager didn't want to talk to her and she could either buy the tickets or leave. She left, vowing that we'd hear from her. I immediately called the manager, told her what had happened, and she practically barked out a laugh. "Yeah, you handled it fine," she said. I thought that was the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. About an hour later, Karen strutted back with the smuggest expression I've ever seen on a human being. She shoved her phone at me and proudly said she'd found our website. Reader, it was not our website. It wasn't even a business listing. It was a stranger's personal blog, and on that blog was a scanned tourism flyer from 6 years earlier listing prices with no currency symbol, just 6. An ancient flyer, completely unrelated to us, posted on some random blog no one had looked at in half a decade. I explained this calmly. Karen did not react calmly. She lost it, absolutely detonated, screaming that we were scammers, liars, criminals, and that we had to take responsibility for information about us on the internet. She threatened lawsuits, police reports, the works. Again, she demanded the manager. Again, I told her the manager did not want to speak to her. She stormed off a second time. The last tour of the day always left at 1500 and returned a little before 1600. We stayed open until it returned so people could buy souvenirs afterward. At 15:30, guess who showed up again? Karen, this time dragging her husband and kids behind her. The kids looked mortified. The husband looked like he'd regretted every life choice that led him to this moment. Karen, though, was ready for round 3. She slapped her hand on the counter and said she'd buy the tickets now and sue us later. Sorry, Karen, the last tour had already left. Her face turned the shade of a boiled lobster. She pointed at the timetable, voice cracking with fury. It says right there, the last tour leaves at 1500. I nodded. Yes, ma'am, it's 15:30. No, it's not, she shrieked. Then I realized her phone, her everything, was still set to Swedish time, 1 hour behind. Finland time, 15:30. Sweden time, 14:30. She was furious that we didn't inform her that we ran on local time in Finland, where she physically was. She stood there shrieking at me, at the guide who returned with the last tour, at the guest getting off the tour demanding that we run a private tour just for her. Threats, insults, demands. Nothing worked because somehow we were immune to her melodrama. Eventually, her husband, who had the defeated posture of a man who'd seen this before, coaxed her out of the park. A few days later, I told the manager and the owner the full story. They laughed so hard they could barely breathe. And that, my friends, is how a Swedish Karen tried to sue Finland over a 6-year-old blog post in a time zone. I bet her kids moved out at 18 and disappeared. Hubs probably went right after they did. And Karen couldn't understand why her family didn't love and appreciate her sacrifices for them. Sheesh. Don't you just love retail? And our next story. Insane 1-star review because I wouldn't break the law and risk my license for him. I own a small independent insurance agency, and I genuinely take pride in how I run it. I'm not some faceless corporate rep reading from a script. I actually care about my clients. I give real, honest advice, and I make sure people get taken care of. Up until recently, every single review I'd ever gotten was 5 stars, and they were all unsolicited, which made them mean even more to me. Then came this situation. A married couple I worked with for years went through a nasty divorce. I won't give details, but the husband was arrested for domestic violence. As part of the divorce agreement, he was supposed to continue paying for their insurance until their assets, house, cars, everything tied to the policies, were either sold or retitled. The wife was the first named insured on every policy, and she kept me updated as things progressed. Then he decided the agreement didn't apply to him. He started calling me, demanding I cancel every policy immediately behind his ex-wife's back. Besides being wildly unethical, it's also illegal. Only the first named insured, the wife, has the legal authority to make those changes. I explained this repeatedly, calmly, thoroughly. I even provided the regulations in writing. Didn't matter. He called nonstop. I think the record was 37 calls in one day. Add in the texts, voicemails, and unhinged rants accusing me of colluding with his wife, and it was like dealing with a conspiracy theorist who decided I was the final boss in his divorce. Every time he tried a new angle to bullying me, it failed. Every time he tried to twist the rules, I shut it down. he could not and would not accept that the law wasn't on his side. And then when he finally realized I wasn't going to cave, he did what every unhinged person with Wi-Fi does. He left a massive, all caps, paragraph-long, 1-star review on my business page. It was rambling, incoherent, and full of accusations that made absolutely no sense unless you lived inside his personal delusion. Thankfully, the dozens of 5-star reviews surrounding it made it look more like internet graffiti than a real complaint. Not one client cared or reached out about it. But still, the level of entitlement and sheer unhinged behavior some people display when they don't get their way, truly amazing. All that because I refused to break the law for him. My verdict? This insurance agent didn't lose a perfect review record. He gained a story that proves his character. He protected a vulnerable client from further harm, upheld the law, and showed that his principles aren't for sale. That 1-star review is the glittery trophy in his case of 5-star integrity. And our last story. An entitled Karen tried to throw a pool party at our house. Today, my stepdaughter called me during my lunch break to see if she can have a friend over, which I said I was fine with. Stepdaughter's very mature for her age. She's 17. While my husband and I work, my stepdaughter and her siblings watch the house with my parents who pop in to check on them. When my dad arrived, a few other cars were right behind him, and he asked, "Can I help you?" It was 4 cars full of teenagers, whom one said, "Yeah, old man, we're here to use the pool." Insert my stepdaughter's name, said she was having a pool party. My dad tells them to stay put and goes to find my stepdaughter, and when he found her, she just said she didn't say anything about a pool party. It was just supposed to be one friend coming over, that was it. My dad calls me and explains the situation. I tell him to go tell the rest of the teens, minus one named Josie, to leave. In a text I got from my dad just now, he says he went back out and told the teens they need to leave, but because he knows Josie, he tells her to stay put. The other teens all call my dad a party pooper and flip him off as they leave. My dad talks to Josie and asks, why did Josie have so many people with her? And Josie says she drove by herself. Within a few minutes, another girl pulls up and asks, where's everyone else? And my dad asks her, did you tell everyone there was a pool party? Girl says, yeah, everyone knows. Insert stepdaughter's name has a pool. My dad tells her the pool isn't even remotely ready, and he recognizes her as the granddaughter of 2 of his friends he goes out to breakfast with on Saturdays with my mom. My dad tells her to leave, and she tells him to F off. My stepdaughter storms out and yells at the girl, telling her to leave, and she was not entitled to try to think she could throw a pool party. The girl eventually left, and Josie explained that the girl was with her, and as soon as Josie got the okay to go over, the girl thought they could throw a pool party without checking in first with my stepdaughter. I'm proud of my stepdaughter for helping my dad. As for the other girl, I'm sure my dad will be talking to her grandparents tomorrow morning about how rude their granddaughter was to him. Update. My parents stopped by to say they spoke with the girl's grandparents during their traditional Saturday breakfast with friends, and they're friends with the girl's grandparents. My father asked his friends what caused her to think she was so entitled to think she could make up such a lie about his stepdaughter having a pool party. The man responded, she's been having a very stressful year with her parents' separation, and without the balance of both parents in her life at the same time, she's been acting out a lot more to get attention and to cause trouble wherever she's planning. She's recently gotten in trouble for shoplifting, getting gas at a gas station where they pump gas for you, then driving off once her car's tank is full, and so much more trouble. Each time she's confronted, she screams she's entitled. The wife replied, her father never was this way, but for her to be behaving like her now entitled ways is ridiculous, and she's been warned several times by both parents to stop acting entitled and causing trouble where there was none. They both feel her parents are doing everything they can to ensure her just because they're now heading for divorce doesn't mean she isn't less loved, but she's not listening. My father told his friend, the next time she does anything to alienate my step-grandchildren, I'm getting the police involved and suggesting she goes to jail. I'm surprised she hasn't gone already. The entire chain of events shows a clear divide between kids who understand respect and kids who don't. Your stepdaughter did everything correctly. Josie did too. She followed the rules. She showed up alone. She explained what happened. The other girl, on the other hand, demonstrated behavior that's becoming a pattern according to her grandparents. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.